Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The bonus content we'll be covering today will be in the sport of wrestling inside the WWE world. In today's bonus segment, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the new Women's United States Championship arriving soon in the WWE. So, last week on Friday Night SmackDown episode, General Manager Nick Aldis reported that a new mid-card title for the women's division is on its way. We'll be seeing the Women's United States Championship very soon on the main roster. So, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the news. Now, this is great for women's wrestling. They are finally getting a women's main roster, mid-card title on the main roster. The women's revolution that started in 2015 has came a long way. 9 years in the making, because women's wrestling has had their first ever women's Money in the Bank ladder match 2017. They had their first ever women's Royal Rumble match 2018. They had their first ever WWE pay-per-view, women's only pay-per-view in 2018. At WrestleMania 35 in 2019, you had women like Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, or Ronda Rousey a part of the first ever women's main event in WrestleMania history. Now they have their first ever women's mid-card title on the main roster. Now I get it. NXT has had a women's mid-card title, that being the NXT Women's North American title, but there's levels to this. This is going to be more special when you see the first ever Women's United States Champion crown. I think WWE should have a tournament for having the first ever Women's United States Championship crown. They should be crowned at the Saturday night main event pay-per-view that will take place in December. I think women like Naomi, Michin, Chelsea Green would be great fits to win the first ever Women's United States Championship. A woman like Shayna Baszler, that was a badass on NXT, but really hasn't had that main roster rub just yet. This would be a good way to elevate her being back into a legitimate threat on the women's roster, possibly having her as the first ever Women's United States Championship. But WWE should not let women like Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch return and get back to the mix to become the first ever inaugural Women's United States Champion, because it doesn't make sense. They're established women. They're main event players. They don't need the title. It should go to a woman that will really elevate a WWE women's mid card, like names like Naomi, Michin, Chelsea Green, Shayna Baszler, Raquel Gonzalez is another name. Piper Niven is another name. Women that could really set up shop and establish a woman's mid-card, because if you give it to a woman that really deserves it, a woman that really doesn't deserve it, I'll just say, for example, it was nice to see Sasha Banks and Bayley as the first ever women's tag team champions, but they didn't need the titles, no. And that's kind of the reason why the women's tag team titles, in my opinion, were cursed from the beginning, because you had women holding the titles that really didn't need to. So it wasn't really, it didn't really feel like tag teams. It just felt like props to put on women at the beginning part when the tag team titles were brought in. So I just think you got to make the perfect champion at the right time. And I think this isn't going to be the last women's mid-card title. This is just for now. I do believe that we will be seeing a women's intercontinental championship at some point in 2025, probably on Monday Night Raw, with the Women's United States Championship probably staying on the blue brand for Friday Night SmackDown. I think Raw being on Netflix in 2025, they're going to also want a women's mid-card title for a show that should be going back to 3 hours of wrestling for 2025 and for sake of the future. So I think we'll be seeing a women's intercontinental championship at some point in 2025, but women's wrestling deserves their flowers and the credit, because they're getting all the things that the men have, and they deserve it, because there's so many talented women wrestlers today, like Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Tiffany Stratton, Liv Morgan, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bayley. I could keep going on and on. There's so many great women's wrestlers. It's a great time to have 2 women's world titles, 2 women's mid-card titles, and a tag team division for women's wrestling on the main roster. But that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.